What's going on, everybody? My name's RJ. This is the Helping Friendly podcast on tour. We're live. It's what day is it? Monday, I guess. Still, I was just hanging out with a bunch of people, and then right when I went live, they all went backstage, back there partying without me. So I'm going to bring them on in a second. Just hope everybody's doing well out there. People who are watching, please insert your comments in the chat box. Tell us what you're thinking. We're going to talk all about the last several shows of Fall Tour and look ahead a little bit to Vegas as well. I'm going to bring in, I guess I'm going to bring in everybody. This is amazing. Look at all these people that we have to bring in. We have Jonathan. Hello, Jonathan.
Howdy.
So good to see you, man.
And you.
Brian Brinkman.
Hey, Brian's
Brian.
here.
Hello. Hey guys,
Brian.
How you doing?
Brian is fresh off tour, actually, like legitimately fresh off tour. How long have you been home?
I've been in my house for 35 minutes.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Been gone at fish concerts, and you came home, and your wife was like, "Hey, you want to help with the kids?" And you're like, "Actually, I'm going to go to podcast."
I'm going to go talk a little bit more about fish because that's kind of what happens.
And we have a special guest, I think this is our first appearance from our friend Matt this tour so far. Hi, Matt.
No, well, this tour maybe, but I've
No,
the people know me.
You've been around.
Yeah,
I'm just saying this is
The
great.
People's Podcaster,
people's
Matt Dwyer.
podcaster.
Even though we've added Brian, obviously we're still missing Brad because it's just how we will continue to be for as long as this is an entity.
I have chairs across the wall here set up for him. So
I know you got to see Brad in Phoenix, Brian, which we should talk about. But Matt, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I have not gotten in to see any shows on this tour yet. Last run I was at was Atlantic City, but I'm going to Vegas this weekend, so I'm preparing my cleansing regimen of like drinking a lot of water, trying to get some sleep, getting myself healthy. You know, it's always a dilemma to me when you're going into a run like Vegas. Do you start to ramp up the intake so that your body is kind of ready and you don't have any like party fouls or anything? Or do you need to just cleanse yourself so that you're in good shape going into it? This time around, I've opted for the clean lifestyle, and I'm ready to fire on all cylinders this weekend.
Live healthy all the time. That way you have no dilemma.
Yeah.
But hydrate extra because it's dry out there in Vegas, which is
Love
it is dry.
Love
which
it.
is what I'm planning on.
That's what. Yeah. So, guys, who's going to Vegas?
Hi. Oh, sorry, Brian. But you just saw some, pretty okay.
I just saw
shows,
some
maybe.
fish. Yeah.
And your wife will be there in your absence, which we'll
my wife will be there, and I will be enjoying it from the couch. I'm very excited to chill out and watch some fish.
I will say before we get into it, because we have a lot of stuff to talk about. We are brought to you by Shift Genuine Cannabis. As most people know, I think on the screen you can see the Shift Genuine Cannabis logo on right next to Jonathan. There. It's actually in the room with him, which is awesome.
Yeah.
We have 2 live events coming up this weekend. I don't know if we're all going to be. Are we all going to be there? I mean, Brian won't, but Jonathan, Matt, Brad, and I think we're all going to make appearances of some kind at this thing, right?
I'll be at the 31st.
Okay, I'll be at both. Matt will be at both. Brad
Absolutely.
will be at both. It's going to be fun. We have some special guests. It's going to be 1 p.m. Pacific. Anyone who's at the Vegas shows, please come to the Brooklyn Bowl and hang with us. We will all be there at one time or another. Brian, how was your mini tour?
It was great. I went into this tour with as limited expectations as I could possibly have. I booked this intentionally. I wanted a road trip across the desert. I wanted to see some off-market fish shows that felt like they'd be a little undersold, fun to move around, kind of cool little cities that I don't typically see fish in, see a bit of the Southwest. Have kind of a thing for the desert right now. So like driving across the desert, seeing fish in the desert seemed very appealing. I love Southern California, so that checked a lot of boxes. And instead of it just being like a very relaxing couple of fish shows with high points, some low points, some, whatever in between, saw one of the best fish shows I've ever seen, and 2 other shows that just had some incredible highlights. The band is firing like crazy right now, and I walked away feeling exhausted in the best way possible.
Matt and Jonathan, you guys you're about to see some shows but haven't seen shows. Can we get into this? Kind of what your takeaways have been from the first 8 shows of the tour so far. Jonathan, do you want to go first? Do you have?
Yeah, I got to say I've listened to all of this music and I'm really disappointed that Fish has been phoning it in night after night. They're going all over the West Coast and just oh, hang on. Sorry. I've been handed a bulletin that says that's bullshit. Turns out Fish is killing it. What is up? This is the greatest tour in 20 years. I'm not kidding. I mean, like, it's maybe bad podcasting, too hyperbolic, but just sitting at home listening to these shows every morning because I can't stay up that late. Uh, I'm just blown away. And I'm seeing very similar commentary from people who were there. They're just, uh, it's great. They're playing fluidly, largely accurately. They're jamming extensively, creative set listing. I mean, I haven't. It's great. I'm absolutely floored. Matt, I know you always feel differently than I do, so you're pretty disappointed, right?
Absolutely. This is I'm kind of considering canceling my Vegas plans. No, I was a huge fan of the summer tour. I thought summer tour was amazing. So I was excited about what was coming. I think the big question in a lot of people's minds was, is there going to be some sort of a lull or a ramp back up period at the start of the tour, given that you had, about 6 weeks between Dick's and Fall Tour, which is not a big break in terms of modern Fish. I mean, usually you have months. But I think, as has been discussed quite a bit, the Tab Tour, the Survivor Tour, and the fact that silver lining out of that was that Fishman and Trey were playing together and killing it every night of that Tab Tour by the end really went a long way towards helping them start off on a strong foot. And I think you can tell it's one thing for the band to be on, but they really have to be invested in making the shows amazing every night to get to the level that they're at right now. And I think it's seriously paying off. And I'm almost scared about what's going to happen this weekend in Vegas. I mean, it's going to be incredible.
No expectations, man. It's
Nope.
just going to be just another 4 nights of Fish with an extra set thrown in. That's all.
Are we allowed to talk about the comparisons? Because David, thanks for tuning in, David. Since 1998, I mean, if you say that this is the best tour since 1997, are you? I mean, I say that I've been saying this since the beginning of 2021, before Fish even started playing. So I'm kind of I'm removed from the
Always
conversation.
ahead of
But
the game.
can you make those comparisons? Brian, can we make those comparisons? Are we allowed?
I think we can. I mean, I think that we have to. Matt said something about summer tour that I think resonates with this like discussion and comparison. And I was thinking about it a lot going into the fall tour, that you have to go back to 1997, where we had a really strong summer tour that was followed by a stronger fall tour. The one knock that I would put to 1998 is parts of the fall tour start to feel like meandering in ways you start to hear kind of the impending darkness of that's gonna come upon in late 1.0 and into 2.0. There are a number of really good summer tours that I can name, like 2003, 2015, that didn't have a fall tour. So I think in terms of like where the band, how they structure their touring schedule this year and the quality of music that we heard throughout the entire summer tour, I think all of us would have been pleased with the shows we got this summer and them not playing in the fall and just going back to those shows over and over and over again. It seems like they've taken what was working over the summer, which were extended jams, kind of in certain areas, odd set list choices, and doubled down on both of those things, making these shows feel, I said this on Twitter about an hour or so ago, it feels really disorienting. Like just to jump ahead to Chula Vista, Fluffhead into a jam, into NICU, into a jam, into Bye Bye Foot, and realizing like at the end of Bye Bye Foot, thinking to myself, we're 3 songs into the show, but we're like 40 minutes into the show. And I could never have predicted any of this happening. That's happening at pretty much every single show. And them kind of breaking down the structure of their shows is something we haven't heard since the 97, 98 period, at least in this manner. Maybe a little bit in 03, but not really on this level.
I don't really like to directly compare year to years. They're very different band at this point, and so
True.
it's not fair to either year to really put them head to head like that. But I would say it's been arguably that long since we had this kind of consistency. Also, when I started seeing Fish, there was they were in a moment where they were constantly building on what they did before. They built on the previous tour, they built on the previous show, and kind of feels like that's happening right now, and that's very exciting. And it's a lot of fun to listen to, and yeah, they're doing things like a extended version of Frankie Says in the middle of the set, Slave to the Traffic Light popping up in the middle of set one, and more than once, and
Yeah.
really just uh, it almost leaves me speechless, but I could probably talk a few more hours about it.
Yes.
Matt, let me. I want to ask you because we actually surprisingly we haven't talked about this tour very much in detail, and we usually talk about most tours in detail. So I have questions for you specifically, but I was thinking this morning after listening to these shows, like to me, there's a kind of like a fearlessness that seems to be happening right now, where it's like that's part of the disorienting thing. I think is like they don't. There's no like, oh, what if can we do this here, or should we like do something else here? They're just like going with it. Do you think that's like Trey? Is it Trey's confidence, or is it more complicated than that? Do you think?
Well, I would say it's the entire band's confidence. I definitely think the swagger aspect is a huge contributing factor when they're playing like this, that they know they can do anything. And so they're willing to go there. There's no hesitation. The way that usually kind of manifests itself, I think, over the course of a really great tour. And I would put this tour on the top shelf with tours like summer 2015, fall 2013. I'll pause there instead of getting back into the 1.0 versus modern day. But what is even common back then versus the tours today is that when they get into a jam, and I think the Fluffhead Jam NICU segment the other night is a perfect example of this. It feels like it doesn't take them any effort to switch from composed mode to jam mode. It happens instantly. So many tours, I mean, even great tours, like, they would play Tweezer, and then it's like, all right, they're going to jam now, but it's going to take them like 3-4 minutes to like start to accumulate some sort of momentum. Now it's like the second that they want to jam, and it can happen at any point when it's expected or not, they just turn it back on and it goes. And that's how you have in 97, the funk, right? It just came back instantly in all these jams. Like they went back to the same familiar place. And to bring it back to the question, I think like that's the swagger that they have, that it's like, all right, cool. We played the song, boom, we're back in it. We're back in that group mindset that we've been in for this tour that's making it so great. And that's what I can't wait to see in Vegas.
I'd like to follow on that with a note that, they are so decisive and collectively decisive that it's almost, I think the one notable exception is in was it Eugene after 2001. You can hear Mike playing with Boogie On, and there's a couple things happening, and then Trey goes to Sigma Oasis. I think that's the most glaring moment there of that kind of like, maybe they're not all 100% on the same page, but that's one moment out of, what is this, 8 shows we're in now, and so much great play, and so much of that which you're talking about, Matt, that has just been really exciting and disorienting even at times, because you don't see it coming, and you don't know which way they're going to go at any point in the show.
I think the other thing just to add to it is like they now seem to be getting to a point where they're challenging themselves. Can we jam out this song? Like Fluffhead going into a jam, You Enjoy Myself going into a type 2 jam. Like these segments, it bodes very well for a hope that Jonathan and I'm guessing RJ and Matt, you feel the same way, but a jammed out Bowie. Like it feels like it's really on the table because they are challenging themselves to say, Fluffhead goes into this, peak that we expect every time. Can we actually get to the jam before we really go through the whole, that peaking segment? You Enjoy Myself in the middle section. Like, are we able to transition this into a jam that we would out of Set Your Soul Free or Everything's Right, songs that really cater to open-ended jamming right after they finish?
Let me ask you something. Do you guys agree with that? Because Matt and Jonathan, because is it that they're saying, can we do this? Or is it that they're actually not thinking about it at all?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, because sometimes when I'm listening, I'm like the You Enjoy Myself. Are they saying like, can we move this to a different place, or are they so in the moment that they're actually like, we're not going to go to the place we usually go to, which is more of like an unconscious decision as opposed to a conscious decision.
I
Does that
think
make
it's a
sense? Or is
conscious
that
decision to surrender conscious decisions, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
that seems like a good middle ground? Yeah.
I also want to call out Brian for naming the David Bowie, which they haven't played all tour.
Mm.
It'll be great
They're
in Santa
holding-
Barbara.
And when they play that tomorrow, I'm gonna fly to Colorado on the way to Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a natural thing that happens when they're on, that these doors just open for them naturally and they're more comfortable going through them. I think a lot back, because people talk about the like, oh, is it a conscious decision to jam this out or jam that out? And I think a lot back to Trey's comment about the Alpine Valley Ruby Waves from a couple years ago, where he said they came out. I forget what they played first. It was Soul Planet or Everything's Right or something like that. And he said that was supposed to be the big jam. So they did say, let's go out and give them a big one. But then they realized in the course of that jam, it just wasn't happening. But then unexpectedly in Ruby Waves, it just happens. So I think they're very willing to surrender. And when they're all locked in the way that they are right now, those opportunities just present themselves so much more often.
The main reason I ask these questions is because I'm trying to read into what's going to happen in Vegas, which is obviously like
Futile.
what a bad use of time. Let's make a better use of time. Brian, Phil, who's watching on Facebook, said Friday to Sunday, each one better than the next. You've been lucky enough to see half of this tour so far, which is pretty incredible for a father of two. I'm really proud of you.
Thank
do
you.
you feel like it's built? Do you feel like it's built every night, or does it feel like, do you feel an upward trajectory, or does it feel like they're just like a slower climb, or like how does it feel after you've seen these shows over the past week or so?
I think it's all varying levels of great. I don't think that we've had a bad show per se on this tour. Even like Sacramento, that felt really disjointed and didn't have a lot of flow to it, was still a really interesting show to listen to. Over this weekend, I Saturday night was like, that was the show for me. Sunday was a really fun classic rock Segway Fest in the LA Forum. Like, it felt very fitting for the moment. The crowd was super into it. I loved the show. I enjoyed the show. I don't know if it would be on the same level for me as Saturday, but I would agree that like Friday felt like the band, moving out of the Northwest, moving back into an outdoor show, played a few more standard kind of rotational songs, but mixed it in with these moments like Martian Monster into a Soul Planet jam, 2 and 3 songs into the show, a 26-minute Everything's right in the middle of the second set, that added that sort of magic that we're hearing throughout the fall.
Unbelievable.
I'm surprised you haven't graphed the fish.net ratings. You're such a big fan of those. I just
there's
went back.
Still time.
I just went back and flipped through them, and it is
I did too.
rating from 3.3 to 4.3. But it's a little bit of up and down. I think, though, overall we're trending up. Just probably because Sacramento was one of the 3 point something or others. But I don't think it's I don't think it's a steep slope. I think they've started out pretty high up and they're maintaining.
Yeah.
So obviously Halloween is just going to be 6 hours of jam, right?
Yeah. I mean, something's going to happen. I do have to say, though, based on the Fishnet ratings, which I have looked at, it's almost like a little bit unfair for not that these shows are independent entities with their, ability to feel, but like it's a little bit unfair for like a show to get a 3.5 or something, a show that has, a couple 2-3 20-minute jams, because the other shows around it are just like so amazing that it's like, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's a little skewed. Like all the shows are so good that it's the ratings are a little bit like in a regular tour, you'd see some below 3 and then like, it would peak and then there'd be like, it's just like a consistent peak. It's totally unfair for everybody except all of us fans.
Yeah, well,
I mean, I
we're
think
the
it's
ones that matter.
I think it's a tour we will be analyzing for that reason for a long time, because like I'm walking away from the last 5 shows I've seen. 3 of them are now in like some of my favorite shows I've ever seen, both setting and music. It was, everything I wanted from Fish. And I remember walking away from night 3 of Dick's and thinking, it'd taken me years to see a show like that again. And then I walked away from San Francisco and being like, how did I see 2 shows back to back that were that high quality and that gave me that much of like a just love and appreciation for this band? And the whole night, every single song felt perfect and felt like, exactly what I seek out when I listen to and I go see this band. Then the same thing happened again on Saturday, and you just start to sound hyperbolic, being like, no, that was the best one I've seen. No, this one's better than that. Like at the end of the day, I think it's like what Jonathan said. They started at a high level, and it's kind of what we always would want with a tour, where it's just consistently great throughout. They don't necessarily need to ramp up because they were on from the start, and they have so much to kind of explore and communicate within each of the shows and within individual songs.
Your experience, though, that you're describing of, how is this show as good or better than the one I just saw, even if it was a month ago or whatever. And it's exactly the kind of thing that I was saying 27 years ago.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
just only makes me even more excited to get on an airplane, which otherwise I wouldn't be excited on an airplane. But
Well, we can't go show by show because that would be a lot. I mean, we could, but we shouldn't. Maybe we can talk about some highlights from the first couple shows, and then move forward. Matt, did you go back to Sacramento and San Francisco? Are there things that stick out to you from those sort of first 3 shows, I guess?
Yeah, I really liked the Set Your Soul Free from the second night of San Francisco. I thought that was a really, really fantastic jam. One of those, like, they kind of like started out with a quick evolve to get warmed up, and then they go into Set Your Soul Free, and it was big. It was big. And there was I'm sure everybody has seen this if you've watched the webcast or even if you've listened to the live Fish recordings. Trey has a talkback mic on stage now, which
Yeah.
is something he's had with Tab for a while, where he can use it to tell everybody the song that they're going to play. And rather than going to Fishman and going to Page now and like getting up close and telling them the song, he kind of says it. And if you listen closely through the right channel in your stereo mix, you can hear what he says, which is cool. I also like being surprised, but if you've got good ears, you can kind of surprise the person next to you and say, they're gonna play this. But he said something at the beginning of that set, like fucking A, man, we're just gonna jam it. We're just gonna jam it out, man. We're just jamming, dude. And Fishman was like, yeah. And they played Evolve, and I was like, okay, well, that didn't quite happen. But then Set Your Soul Free was just huge.
That's awesome. That's
There's
great.
there's a riff that they land on in that Set Your Soul Free that they return to slightly in Ruby Waves, that like it's the most like 70s Pink Floyd arena rock that I feel like you can hear from Trey. And I think it's a lot of the reason why we're hearing so many rumors about a certain Pink Floyd record for Halloween.
I just want to counter the Set Your Soul Free, which I can't dispute as being an amazing highlight, with the Chalk Dust Torture that that played Wings. It was a 4-song set that night, right? Evolve,
right.
Set Your Soul Free, Wingsuit, and Chalk Dust. And that Chalk Dust Torture is A, huge, B, beautiful, with just an outstanding peak at like 17 and a half minutes. In fact, I was listening to this when I logged onto this thing, and Brian caught me just like air drumming and just jamming out. And I don't air drum because I don't drum, but it's so good. So good. It's a really amazing. And considering what they did the night before with which is I think the show you saw, Brian, RJ, you saw that one too, with the extended Frankie Says, and God, you just knew we were in for it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the Frankie Says from this San Francisco show that we saw was, man, what a cool, like, to hear the first one in a long time. I think probably my first since the island tour. But and then like suddenly you're 15 minutes into it, and that was a time it happened to me like 3 times that night where I had to take out my phone and look at the Fish from the Road Twitter to try to figure out what song was last played because I had no idea what song it was. And that's kind of a rare occurrence these days and a really, really wonderful place to be at a concert. I was like, it took me 5 minutes to figure out what song was playing, which is kind of cool.
Can we also give it up? I mean, I don't want to dwell on, what happened that night in San Francisco, which was obviously very, very unfortunate. But obviously, a lot of love for everybody that was affected by that, including the folks that were injured. But can we just give it up for Evan Reeves, who was in a wheelchair with a broken leg watching that set? I mean, like, that's like real American hero shit right there. And as far as I'm concerned, Evan Reeves never opens his wallet again at a Phish show. If you see that guy, you get him a beer, you get him a water, you get him whatever he needs. He is he is a hero.
I mean, amazing fortune to be able to, guy landed on him, so he was able, didn't get more hurt than he was, but then wants to go back in and watch the rest of the show. We all would like to think that we're tough enough to be like, I just let me wait till the show's over. But I can tell you, if that happened to me, I'd be like, get me out of here, give me the morphine, I'm done. You know, maybe can I get the webcast on my phone? You know, like props to him, and best thoughts to everybody who was affected there. And credit to Trey and Fish for saying something about it in Eugene.
Yeah, I thought that was really nice. I mean, we, none of us, surprisingly, are engineers, lawyers, or event planners, so we don't really know anything about the situation. Although we've talked about it, just not while we're recording. But what a horrible thing for everyone who had to deal with it. It's crazy. And then so they went to Eugene, played 2 shows that again kind of kept the theme going. To me, and Brian, I was thinking about this before you said this, but then you said it and made it a lot more real. Like when you were talking about the Chula Vista show, that it was like I feel like this whole tour has kind of just been like an extended sound check or an extended band practice or something. I kind of felt that at definitely part of the Tab tour, but it feels like now that bled over, and it's just like every show is just like a jam session.
Yeah, it's a jam session, and it also feels like thinking about like the second night in Eugene, throwing out End of Session in the middle of Split Open and Melt. It seems like they're willing, uh, bust outs and extreme rarities that would come out at a sound check and would not be heard live, for maybe a few shows. Like it just has that very loose feeling to it where we're playing this. Why don't we just see how this works? And, it's kind of this fusion of the approach that they had in, say, like 2012, when they wanted to play a lot of random songs to kind of, spice up the set list, but with half of the total songs in a show and extensively more jamming. You get kind of the best of both worlds with that. I watched both Eugene shows, and I really enjoyed parts of the first one. The Down with Disease opener was a really stunning moment that seemed to be kind of the turning point of like, we're not going to have a reset show on this tour. We're going to come out and play a 26-minute jam to start things out. And, I had a friend who was there who just kept sending me, oh my God, wow, how is this still going? This is the first song, just like, consecutive texts about it. But I thought the second night flowed perfectly from the start to the finish. Completely energy. You've got just like 2 great unique jams out the gates there. But the highlight for me from this 2-night run was the Ruby Waves. There's a moment they get into around 15 minutes, and it carries over for the back half of the jam, and it's some of my favorite playing of the entire year. They're so locked in at that point in time, and they're playing sounds that are almost non-comparable to any other sounds that they've been playing with throughout this entire year.
Jonathan, I assume that you have thoughts about the Split Open and Melt. You're talking on mute, but I assume you're talking about the Split Open and Melt.
I'm not. I want to
yeah.
I want to shout out the stash because which is probably why I was on mute, because I was off topic. And the Split Open and Melt is really cool. End of Session, just out of nowhere. I think that you mentioned the 2012 where they were throwing out songs left and right a lot, and I mean the difference is that they're very successful now. And it's cool when they would throw out these songs, but they would, you'd kind of be like, it's really cool, good for the stats, but they didn't really nail that.
Yeah.
And now they are pulling it off, even if it's something like what was it, the playing the song to over the wrong drum beat because that's like out of the simple drum beat or whatever it is. Those kinds of things, they work, or at least they're making it work. And it's again that creative sound checky kind of vibe is so fun.
I feel like that Ruby Waves from Eugene rivals the Ruby Waves from Alpine. Even not quite as long, but just in terms of new ground covered, it felt to me like that was a pretty different kind of piece of improv from some of the other stuff we've heard this tour. Matt, did anything about that jam or the Eugene shows stick out to you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of great huge jams. That's one. The Disease, which opened the other show, was a great one. Shout out to a couple of awesome song selections over those 2 nights. First off, the return of Energy, which is one that they definitely should be playing more, and I know is a fan favorite. Lonely Trip, which they continue to place as like it's almost, Jonathan's going to hate me for this, but it's almost like they're El Paso now. That it's just like the amazing, delicate landing vehicle after an intense, steep jam. And then Leaves, which is like one of my favorite songs they've written in the past, decade, and has not been played live quite enough, and they nailed it. So that's one of those things that people forget about. It's like, yes, there's huge jams, there's bust outs, and there's great first sets and stuff, but it's like the song selection and placement has been just like nearly perfect. The shows never feel like they're getting broken up at all.
I love El Paso, so you get a pass on that one.
So I guess one quick question: Do you guys think the improv is pretty different jam to jam, night to night, or does it feel like it's all part of one? Like if you were to stitch this together, these long jams into one monster jam, would you hear a ton of different things, or would you hear similar themes being like repeated, just from a musical perspective?
Who's got the time for that? There's so much. There have been jams,
True.
jams tours where you're like, oh, well, we got these 5 jams from the tour and we'll, it'll make a nice playlist. You can almost fit it on a CD. Remember CDs? But now, yeah, nobody's got that kind of time. But I think there's similarity. And there always is. Trey's working with this same set of new toys and he's doing different things night to night. It's definitely not super repetitive. They're reacting in different ways. They're coming at them from different songs to begin with. So it's not stale, even if there are similarities. It's to my ear, at least.
Yeah, to my ears, the consistent nature of it is based around Trey's really lyrical guitar playing. And that's something that even in the Baker's Dozen, you didn't hear as much. He's very confident that he has a riff that he wants to unveil in that moment. It comes out like it was pre-written. He can adapt it, and it allows the band, as they're modulating in these jams, to find new ideas that in a lot of cases probably propel them 5 minutes further. They know that that's going to happen. It's not just going to be a wash of sound and then a fade out into whatever the next song is. There's a lot of purpose with it, which is how you get like a set like last night where they're falling in and out of different songs, and it not feeling like they're forcing an entry into another song. So if there's anything consistent, that's what I would say it is.
I think it's in the sounds that I hear. I mean, it's not necessarily what they're doing with them, but the same sort of palette that they're using to create different moods. The same very kind of synth heavy tones that they're all using could be used to create something like something, that sounds like Pink Floyd Run Like Hell, or it could be used to create something like what happened at the end of Piper the other night, which was basically a gateway to hell. I mean, it's just like, it's amazing. And everything in between. So it's, yeah, I mean, that's what I think.
So let's get back to Brett Brinkman tour. Phoenix, Chula Vista, LA. Pretty awesome. Brian, what were your highlight? I know it's hard to summarize, but that's what we're that's what we're here to do. How would you summarize?
Just name one song, Brian. Just the whole.
let's talk about the forum, because it was last night's show, and technically we're here to review that show. But first, before we do that, Brian, what's your quick summary of the 2 nights prior? One of which you told me was the most insane concert experiences of your life. So I'm sure that'll be easy to summarize quickly.
Yeah. Phoenix, I thought it was a very off-market Southwestern type of set list where, a lot of kind of songs that we're not going to play in kind of a showcase concert, but mixed into it because the band is feeling so confident, so on right now. Incredible jam out of Soul Planet, incredible jam out of Everything's Right. Those are the 2 biggest highlights for me, and the rest of the show was fine. It was good. I had a great time. I danced around with Brad and friend of the pod, Ben Greenfield. I got to high five Brad's daughter at set break, and I was sad that she did not get the driver that she wanted. But it's a fun shed, really beautiful night. Moon was rising right next to the venue. Good show with 2 very strong jams. It's kind of my biggest takeaway.
They played Hydrogen.
And
a nice one.
A very nice one. 1023 Chula Vista. This might have been the best concert I've ever seen in my entire life by any band. When you nail everything down, I was right up front. I had nobody in front of me. I had very few people behind me. I didn't realize that when you were that close, you had so much space. I could literally just lean on a rail and watch the band communicate. My biggest takeaway is something I've never had at any sort of Phish show. I listened to Mike more than any other band members because I was right in front of him. I could hear him. I could watch him play riffs. I could hear him work against Trey, work with Trey, throw out ideas. It was a huge awakening moment for me in terms of what he adds to the band in a way that I just hadn't seen up close before. So that was my biggest takeaway. If you want, we can talk for 4.5 hours about this show, and I probably won't exhaust myself at that point. So it was amazing.
What was your favorite moment? I think I asked you this yesterday, but tell us again. What was your favorite moment of that show?
Tube. The only moment that I looked away from the stage was during Tube. They're playing this dance beat from hell. It sounded like the darkest LCD sound system that you could ever imagine. And I looked back at the crowd, and it looked like the entire venue was just like tilting on its axis, like the way the lights were hitting it, the way everybody was dancing in unison. That was just, I realized at that moment that I wasn't just having an experience, that the band was playing an incredible show and everybody was soaking it in.
Some amazing parts of that.
They could have. No, it's quite all right. They could have walked off after Slave, and that first set would have felt complete. Not a knock on Slow Llama or even Rise Come Together, which, despite that song and all the haters, I that gets stuck in my head. I like it. But it really, that Tube jam, the Fluffhead in ICU jam, throw in Bye Bye Foot, that's a perfect little set right there. With Slave on the end, but the rest of it comes in nicely. That Piper is my jam of the week of the tour. It's insane. The transition into it is good. I like Matt's Gates to Hell. What was it? Is that what you said, Matt?
The Portal to Hell.
Portal to Hell. Yes,
Portal
well
to
put.
Hell.
It's just outer space drug music or something, man. It was good.
That's why we're here. Matt, did you hear anything different from that Chula Vista show? Or you mentioned the Piper a couple times, but just sort of a continuation of what they're doing with this sound palette.
Yeah, and I think Piper was probably my highlight of the night watching from the couch, but you could have removed the Piper or just made the Piper 100% less good, and it still would have been an amazing show. The show had been so good up to that point that when the Piper happened, I was actually shocked. I couldn't believe that they still had that much gas in the tank. So it's a highlight amongst highlights. I mean, pretty much every single song, the NICU through line through the entire show. It just felt like one really, really cohesive statement from start to finish.
It's impossible to know this, but I feel like that Piper was the longest in a long time. Usually a Piper you get in a second set within its 8 to 11 minutes, and it's sort of between twist and something else. But this was like it was its whole own thing.
Pretty sure since October 19th, 2016, they played a lot of long pipers on that in late 2016, and then everything has been like 11 to 12 minutes since then.
So there is a way to know. That's amazing. Learn something new every day. All right. So, Brian, let's talk about last night at the Forum. The only thing I know about it is that it's $75 to park there. And it seems affordable. And, if you have 15 people in the car, it's not bad.
It's perfectly reasonable for Los Angeles.
It was actually 45, but still quite ridiculous. The 75 was for the football game that happened in the stadium next to it earlier, which they didn't leave until 5 o'clock. So there was nobody in the fish lot until like an hour before doors.
Oh, wow. Okay. So Brian, what was let me just say, type 2, You Enjoy Myself with no vocal jam. Man, it doesn't really get better than that for me. But tell us about it from your perspective.
Yeah, the highlight for me was the You Enjoy Myself, MoMA, Simple, Waiting All Night segment. It felt like they picked up the thread from the night before. Anything was possible at that point in time. I really like how Simple, was 7 minutes long, but had this kind of dark, ominous groove that we heard in San Francisco, that we heard in Dick's. Waiting All Night, just like falling into that song was just like more of an example of kind of what we've been talking about with the way that the band is playing. It's disorienting nature. And then the second that I've never seen a Segway Fest. I've never seen a Tweezer Fest. It was a kind of historical stamp in terms of my overall fish going experience. I thought the song selection in that set was really strong, and I really enjoyed how rather than just using each song as just a straight bridge into another one, kind of how like 1994 Segway Fest would be. There were a lot of jams kind of scattered throughout. Jonathan Hart coined micro jams throughout the entire set that I thought were really enjoyable. Birds of a Feather, Say It To Me Santos. Last note, and probably aside from the You Enjoy Myself, my biggest highlight of the show was the way that they ended Bathtub Gin. They built it up, but it was slower, it was more atmospheric, and then they just went into what sounded like a hint of the Carini jam that we saw at San Francisco night one, that encore, the 19-minute type 2 encore. What an amazing thing for the band to have done. It sounded like they entered that territory where there were a lot of synths, it was building, but rather than peak it, they just kind of brought it down to near quiet, ended it, and walked off stage. And it just felt like in years past, Trey would, throw in the Bathtub Gin lick and just try to bring it in for like a big finish and a big peak. And he just knew we made our statement. Let's let this music kind of linger for a couple seconds and then we'll walk off.
Incredible. According to the set list on Fishnet, there were 4 unfinished songs last night, which I feel like that's got to be, for this era, that's really unusual, especially with how much Trey loves finishing songs, like even after long jams. I don't know what they were doing, but they were just, man, they're out there.
He has been finishing songs a lot lately, and we've talked about this on the show over the summer, because not only finishing them, but actually doing a really nice job of returning to and landing them quite elegantly.
Yeah.
But to hell with that. It's a Tweezer Fest. We just play stuff and go until we find the next thing. And I like that, none of the set lists properly represented anymore. This morning there was set list on fish.net that got revised. Dave Steinberg got overruled by the set list committee, and they took out all of the tweezers that he dropped in between the songs. Because Trey plays the riff, he wrote tweezer and they cut it out. But I like that Trey reminds us that we're still inside the freezer throughout the set until it ends. Just a great show. Probably, early in the running for one of my favorite Tweezer Fests of recent years, but we'll see how it holds up for me, in the coming weeks, months, etc. Matt, what do you think?
Sorry. Thanks for spoiling it because I actually haven't heard last night's.
Oh, it never happened.
That was part of my Vegas preparation regimen. I made a responsible decision last night after working on very little sleep in the past 2 weeks to actually go to sleep last night. And I'm going to watch the show tonight. But now I'm very excited to see what went down in LA. And I'm glad that everybody that was there had a blast.
Well, don't worry. They did not cover the doors. And they do not play Waiting All Night on the beat out of the Simple Jam.
Nope, not at all. Not at all. And they didn't play Fee. All right, guys, one quick prediction before we wrap up. Just one thought about Vegas that you have at the moment. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be music related. Just what are you feeling going into this next weekend?
Trapezes.
Nice.
I don't know. I just got a hunch.
I love it. I
got a
love
hunch.
it.
9 sets, 4 encores.
There you go.
Care to challenge that, Brian?
I just like to be
I think-
right. That's all.
I think some people will win money, and I think some people will lose money, and some people will do both.
Well, that was the worst ending that we've ever had, and we've done a lot of shows. This is, I mean, yeah, it's kind of like trite to just be like, expect the unexpected, you know? But that's like, could it possibly be any more fun to go into a weekend with that being the sentiment? Because I feel like that is where we are, which is just outrageous.
Yeah, I
Feels
think
outrageous
we
to me.
always go into a Halloween run happy and really excited, and everyone feels like they're, it's a huge experience. I think that this year feels slightly different just because of the quality of play that we have leading up to it, and the unknown factor. It's like at an all-time high right now. I'm really excited for you three. I'm really excited for my wife. I'm really excited for everyone out there who's going to the shows. You guys are going to see some amazing music.
I just in preparation for Vegas, I just got my 3rd vax shots for COVID, and my flu shot. PSA: if you haven't done those things, you're kind of inside the window to do that, but you should do it anyway. Despite that, if you're going to Vegas, wear your masks.
Wear your masks.
Wear your masks. It's not.
I'm going to do it.
It's not.
I'm going to do it because you said it. I'm going to do it. I got my 3rd shot, and I am going to wear my mask because Matt told me to, and it's the responsible thing to do. So everyone out there, be responsible. We'll be back on Thursday morning to recap the Santa Barbara show. Sorry, Wednesday morning. Unfortunately, Brian will not be at that show, but luckily he's at home, so that's good.
I made it.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks to Shift Genuine Cannabis. Guys, we're going to talk next week, and man, it's going to be an interesting conversation. Can't wait. But thank you guys. This was super fun.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks all.
See you guys later.
Okay.
Everybody.